Hi there, welcome to my site. My name is Ben Keat. I am the author of this site, and the artwork is also my own. Please enjoy it. Please look through it as much as you possibly can. There's lots to look at there. I'm going to make a couple of videos, one or two videos. I haven't decided to talk what's going on in this website for those of you who find things difficult to understand, and maybe a little bit about the background as I discuss various aspects of the website. So the first page, platform one, talks about the realm of Ina, which is cosmically called Glaxtai Ramsby. It is the creative mass that I have drawn together from my times through a spiritual development process, which I outline in grassroots.ucos.org, which is the Academy website. So during this process of spiritual development, I found that I was able to create universal phenomena through a process of, say, going back in time many thousands of years or millions of years, whatever, and seeding the local galaxy through time, and then coming back and putting it into the physical construction of, first of all, the data network, including universal phenomena such as communication phenomena and other things like that come from the universe, and also the drafting of the structuring of the cosmic realm of Ina in Gloucestershire, in this location, ultimately, through the development of processing my spiritual creation through the network that I've created, the communications network, so that when phenomena start to happen, we have a phenomena which I outline on the first page of this website called cyber dimensional escalated creation, which is not just the augmentation of creation. It's very fast changing, reacting. Everything suddenly becomes different to its existing structure and develops into a cosmic reality that is a physical creation of a city and a realm with mountains and different topography, and also a seismic shift in change of size, dimensions, and the very nature of the buildings, the landscape, everything, so that an area the size of Gloucester and the surrounding counties, an 80-mile radius around the village where I live, could actually be perceived to be something, when you get inside it, much, much greater, much, much bigger. But we don't know yet cosmically how much is going to change in terms of that aspect. So it may become something much greater than we'd actually hoped for, without actually changing the world outside it too much. So it would be quite difficult to know what was going on inside, except for maybe seeing the foothills, these mountains. In a way, I suppose the best way to explain that would be like if with Doctor Who's TARDIS, it's just a TARDIS, but you go inside, just a phone box, but you go inside, and it's a giant spaceship. So the reality, the change nature, is a time and space phenomena that can't yet be described or explained in terms of physical measurements. So the city of Ina itself is the area of Gloucestershire in the main, a little bit bigger perhaps in its existing structure. And it's perfectly white. It has beautiful buildings. I sort of describe it to be similar to Aleppo in terms of its beauty and its structure before Aleppo got destroyed, but also with ultra modern, super modern, and ancient creativity, all living side by side. In the valleys, it sinks down into the think tank level, which is actually an underplate underneath the university, the city of the universe. And in the underplate, you have the think tank, which is the place where wealth is created through farming ideas and getting people to contribute to the whole student senior program, which is the development towards becoming a practice holder, someone who actually owns a practice and has operations in existing business in the outside world, and to bring ethereal change from their pioneer idea to fruition. But everyone will get a chance of becoming a senior, even those who don't attend the academy, which is the principal building in Amberley itself, which is the main university, the place where the elders and the students live side by side and develop these ideas that students come up with from pioneer thought. As long as they're proved to be original, they will develop into a senior and own their own practice. So that's the practice. Most of the practices will be in the mountains. Most of the main practices will be in the mountains, only the big practices. But there are going to be many practices within the city itself, and also even in the think tank, you have people who have their own ideas, who live in the think tank and want to set up their business in the think tank. In terms of where the existing business clusters are, these will be places which will be able to be given over ultimately to the pioneer seraph who comes up with the idea, the seraph being the senior, who comes up with the idea at scratch and then develops into the person who runs the practice. So that's a little bit about the student program, the student senior program, which is all hand in hand with the think tank. The think tank is, again, ancient creativity, medieval type style buildings, mill buildings, that sort of thing, but also ultra modern, like a sort of how you'd imagine a think tank to be, with lots of plate glass and flying craft and all that sort of thing on the space program, which I'll come on to in a minute, just like the main city does as well. And there's a hierarchy and a different structuring of the way law is, or the processing of thought and the development of people into better systems is undertaken. Some people in the think tank are ambassadors, or some people are people who are involved in structuring the student candidates within the think tank to become better people. They're usually people who've had vulnerable issues, but they develop into people who become they are stand on their own 2 feet and to create their own ideas. Ideas will be bounced off their counterparts, and finally there'll be people involved in the think tank who will farm the ideas through the network to enable the existing structure in the world to develop ideas to mesh with these ethereal concepts that are going to become physical and push the whole thing through the roof. So that's the student program outlined. And in the main city, there are other plans to do with the setup and the way the process is done. There's many temples, palaces. There's a temple. There are many palaces. There are forums for students to discuss their ideas and motivations. There are going to be there's the academy, which is a massive building, going to be dedicated to the main structuring, and most places of education will feed to the academy and develop their ideas with the academy hierarchy, so that when you start to graduate from the think tank, you move into the academy and then develop your programs from there. But away from education and the processing of student senior, people will have their own ideas, they have their own lives, They'll live in comfortable surroundings. Their homes will be comfortable. It's a means-tested tax haven, the city. It's not designed for people to have to pay tax, but people who don't have a lot of money will not be expected to pay for their healthcare and that sort of thing, and their education or whatever it may be, or services. But people who have a lot of money will also have a vested interest financing using our universal credit system rather than the existing finances of the earth. They'll be financing various institutions that go hand in hand with the practice they are running or the business that they are running. And that way they get some of the kudos for that eventuality, that department or whatever it may be in that system in the public sector, say, developing and giving them kudos, and also, as an investing, they will receive returns from it, and be it knowledge or scientific exploration or whatever it may be, they'll get that from investing. But people who are just starting out or are in the student process or all that sort of thing, there'll be a fair amount of free accommodation, free vehicles, free things that don't cost much money, because there's a lot of universal infrastructure that's going to be here, and it's going to be shared with everyone who wants to share it with me. So that's the idea. That's why I'm setting this up. It's also going to be possible for people to pay for certain things. Obviously, if people want to pay for extra things, like if their furnishings or fittings need to be developed to a higher standard, then we have the interior arc web phenomena, which develops not only the communication systems and the technology within each abode or each office or place of business. It also means that, through a network, you'll be able to cyber dimensionally create whatever you require, be it clothing, be it white goods in your kitchen, be it, to put it in layman's terms, or be it, decor in your house, all that sort of thing. If you want added extras, added trimmings to what you have as a standard model, that's fine. You can pay the extra. Also, people will be able to purchase extras like better vehicles. If you look at the greys section, it talks about the cherubim and seraphim and the archangels. These are all flying vehicles, which will replace our existing motor vehicles, I suppose, in the first phase, through the coming of the existing space programs, like through the existing space infrastructure back into Eneth, into the ESP, the Eneth space program. So perhaps, for example, people who've seen a little bit about the secret space programs and all these sort of things that are much talked about. Some say they're conspiracy theories, but there's a lot of truth in them. And we're going to get a lot of assets from that because of my involvement in the creation aspect of those programs and my contribution to the security and technology and all that sort of thing that goes into it. So the city will have that sort of wonderful atmosphere. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be a place for people to do work and business and study, and to reach the pinnacle of their earthly lives, to be led in a much better systems. Much better behavior, good ambassadors for the realm, good people to get other areas of the world set up in the Commonwealth, that sort of thing. Everyone's going to have a chance at being a pioneer somewhere else, perhaps, either on the Earth or when we develop our space program out in the space. But also the city is contained in something I call Walls One, which are a bit like if you look at Paris and the banlieue of Paris, they contain this beautiful city inside, and I suppose it's going to be a bit like that in if you look at an earthly city like Paris. But cosmically, we're not going to know exactly what the city's going to be like. We're not going to know how much dimensional change there's going to be and how much what the reality of it's going to be exactly like. It's very difficult to describe. I mean, you look at things like Blade Runner in places, it's going to be a bit like that, but you may also look at exactly some of the ancient creativity like Aleppo and all that sort of wonderful old cities. Some of them are going to have that feel to them, even though have very modern technology ingrained in them, integrated in them. So it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how it's going to turn out. But with the reality of the existing structure, it's gonna change beyond all recognition. It's also a city for the countryside. It's got these walls around it, like the banlieue, which contain mainly the public sector. All aspects of the public sector will be dealt with there, and will either be paid for or means tested again, depending on your situation and how you what you contribute in terms of tax. Because if you decide you're one of those sort of people who wants to pay tax and receive all the commodities through tax, then you will get certain things, more things for free, perhaps in the public sector. It's hasn't yet been. It's been fleshed out roughly on my website in very general terms, but the actual the integrity of the whole thing is difficult to describe. How we're going to run the tax program, because there's going to be temporary art connections and permanent art connections. So we haven't yet decided who's going to get what. But what I've more or less just roughed out in the website is that in the exterior, in the realm outside, which is the countryside outside the city, there are going to be these villages set up, which are more like many small cities, lots of small cities dotted around. And they will have connections that are permanent to various people out there, but the vast majority of them will be temporary up connections, and also in the mountains until the Seraphim go out to the mountains and have their business through the academy system. But by that stage, they should be self-sufficient, so they should be able to develop their system and pay tax for having their practice in the mountains. So in the city, we are going to have these walls one around it, which will also keep. They're gonna be brackets in walls one, which will farm the Cloud9, which is a property that is uh, contributes this messianic quality in communications, security, healing, everything, which is called Space LOD, Space Legal Organizational Directional, Space TM, if abbreviate it, make it easier. And this is the existence of space on Earth. This is the actual fact that universal creation and all the stars and galaxies and everything else in the local cosmos will come and be part of Ina. But the existence of space, the actual what space is, we don't quite know. No one's been up far enough to know what it is. Well, I have a bit more understanding of what space is, and with all these torsion fields and seismic realities in space, it's not simply just a vacuum. There's a lot more going on than that, and there will actually potentially it will have certain qualities to it, certain properties to it. And actually, it's my theory that space is actually the sixth dimension, and the sixth dimension contains lucrative assets that can be tapped into, such as being able to power the internet for the whole city through this Cloud9, and being able to power other commodities, such as the security, the changeability, the creation of things that need to be created, if you like, the turning things into physical reality from nothing. So these things, Space TM is going to be instrumental in creating a better life for everyone and giving us our universal qualities. Really, that's one of the main things. But also, all the normal everyday public services will be operated from Wolves One as well. And so that basically explains most of what I need to talk about within the city. Also, there'll be a tramway going all the way around in the inside of Wolves One, which, if you look at some of the scenes in Blade Runner, it's going to be a little bit like that with these tramways running. As on ground level, I suppose, if you like, if you got high-rise buildings in Wolves One, to keep the ethereal qualities within the city and the network as it should be, the feeling and the atmosphere and everything else. But I did mention briefly there's a city for the countryside earlier, and the reality is they're going to be rainforests. It's going to be teeming with life in the city, and gardens and existing nature reserves and all that sort of thing are going to be able to be controlled through interfacing with them. So it's the very nature of caring. We won't actually have to go and cut lawns. We won't have to go and prune bushes and all that sort of thing. You'll be able to interface and almost, I suppose, in a way, I'm trying to move away from the terminology of using program your garden, but the technology will be there so that you'll be able to interface with your technology in your house to bespoke your garden to yourself. Most of the wildlife and the wild areas will be let to grow with their cosmic plants and all that sort of thing, and the reality that they have to. But in certain aspects where management's needed, it'll be facilitated by certain commodities in space programming, rather than having to get chainsaws out and fell trees and all that sort of thing. That's the last thing we want. You want to destroy plants. It'll be managed in a much more organic way through technology, if you see what I'm saying. But also, there will be people with jobs in gardens and in natural reserves. So the outer realm is a bit like that with the wildlife and the reality of it. But there's a lot more to do with the commodities of the plants that we're farming. We're going to hopefully transform the pharmaceutical industry with our plants that grow in the countryside. I've talked about the villages and the topography change. In the mountains, they're going to be vast mountains, huge mountains, with these, I suppose, if you like, in the way that Davos has like a business hosting. In a very different way, the mountains are going to have these practices with these vast statues of saints with swords or whatever it may be, standing within the doorway, a bit like Lord of the Rings. When he goes to the mountains to drum up help against the forces of darkness, but it's going to be there's going to be much more technology within the mountains that's initially going to be used by ambassadors actually before the academy students become seniors and run their own practice from there. The ambassadors will be drawn in from the creation that's come back to and amassed itself here to generate the reality of what's going to happen. And they will have the freedom of having their own business in the practices, but they're going to have to pay taxes. They're going to have to give up the practice when the senior develops in that particular existing business into the legal organizational direction. Which is all described in Ellie Lord. If you read about Ellie Lord, talks about the legal crossovers in world law. But yes, the reality for the ambassadors is very much more closest to the earth. So the way they do business, the way their businesses will operate, are very much in the existing framework of global business, or even small business in some cases, if it's a small practice or a practice within a practice. But the whole thing's going to be, we're gonna try and fill up the place before we develop into seraphim and cherubim and all the other things that we're going to hopefully develop into as we go through the process of seniority. As each and every student gets developed and turned into a higher being. So other things to talk about are in technologies of Ina. Um, I talk about Yesu. Yesu is yes where, which is like a commodity that is the inner realm travel transport codes in a data mapping sequence that mean instant travel can be achieved by walking just literally down a very short corridor between two hermetically sealed doors, and suddenly you're in another part of the city. I'm hoping to appoint people to steward these programs and have people at either end of each corridor to let people in and out of the Yesu program. But this whole program will create electricity and generate electricity to be farmed in other parts of the world, hopefully. And there's going to be energy created from it. And also, while I'm on the subject of tendrils, we've got the fact that there's going to be energy created that will spin off these tendrils, and like a sort of I suppose like the way telephones work, with optics and all that sort of thing. We're going to have miniature cameras inside the whole platform, which will be able to view the universe that we're made of in some spiritual way, and beam them, which I have been setting up in the tendril system. I'm not just saying, some spiritual way, and let's hope it happens. There's been a lot of work involved in the creation of this and the synthesization of this as well, not just spinning, not just creating the universal fluff in the first place, but also, there's much more to it in the synthesization process. But the reality will come as the life book, which will be viewing walls in wherever you require one, either for extra money to have an extra big one, or to have 2 or 3 or whatever you need in your place of business or work or house, or wherever you want it in the street. And people will be able to interact to a certain extent with the content on the viewing wall. The idea is to engender some kind of teleportation of commodities or goods and that sort of thing through either small, medium, or large portals that are connected to the viewing walls, so that we'll be able to actually get products through this. Not all products. I mean, we're not going to do the whole food business out of from within the realm out of business straight away, but we are going to be able to have artifacts, technologies, different species maybe will be able to come through the system once they've been checked. It should all be foolproof anyway, but there should be technologies checked that something dodgy doesn't get in. But they're going to be, the main bulk of it will be exotic foods, things that we can't make or create here or don't have here. There'll be certainly the possibility of interacting with certain hosts on the the viewing wall program, and not physically going out there and them coming to us, but they will be able to teleport certain artifacts through these networks. So that's something that should be quite fun. To be in the life book is definitely worthwhile, and will create one of the main reasons for this realm being a universal realm. It's one of the main functions of it. So also, what else do we have? Some of the other technologies that if you can read about it on Technologies of Ina, there's a lot to talk about there. There's a crime and action, premonition and prevention systems. There, if you look at the Technology of Ina, it talks about caps and bit hyphenation, which is the way we transmit the light web at the speed of light around the whole realm, so everything's super fast. But also, there's going to be data pipe storage in the think tank, which is going to enable that. And also in technology terms, something goes wrong on a computer and you say it's wrong, it generally, with a bit of interfacing with it, it corrects itself. It also means that everything's benign, that is AI. It's got a Christian ethos rather than a negative standard bent, which basically means if it's standard, it's going to be from off-world and a negative entity. Whereas if we diffuse this standard AI with Christian AI, it turns benign and everything works for the better cause. So that's some of that. And talking about AI, some of the artisan nature of the local area I live in. It's very artisan. A lot of people who have a lot of skills and talents in art, design, not necessarily technology and science. There are people who do have that, obviously. And equally, the universal arts and sciences will be studied and used to get the universal qualities from them to create the reality of what we want to set up in the space program or wherever it may be. And as the artisan network builds up, we're going to have a great reality of what's going to go on in the space programs and in terms of technology and in terms of universal creation or whatever we need to create. We're going to be able to extract creative reality from this while at the same time making money for them through their artwork or whatever it may be that they start to develop as the process unfolds, as their skills develop. And the reason I talk about AI with this is some of them will actually be able to set up their own shops where they build these AI models who can operate certain things in order to do work for people in the platform. So that's going to be useful. But the artisan thing is a very important quality of the whole of the network. And when we start to get this universal reality from that, we can then turn it into something else, and then eventually let the artisan themselves seniorize and run that practice themselves when they're ready to take it over and give it its spin into the next dimension. Great, so that's basically what I want to talk about. There's also plate one, which is the next step up. That's what the whole artisan structure of the realm is integral in creating plate one, which is the next mission to create the Commonwealth through a giant ship that shall be able to create platforms that are embellished for these students who have developed their programs, take over as seniors outside. So that's if you read all those things, you're welcome to. There's plenty there, more to talk about, more to read. But please share my website with everyone you know, and give my videos a thumbs up if you get a chance. And I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.